Namaste. This is Dr. Shwetha by Baratike. Multiple IVF failures. When do we call a person having multiple IVF failures? A person undergoing 2 or more embryo transfers with good quality embryos, failing to conceive, we term them as multiple IVF failures. Now, what are the reasons for multiple IVF failures? Firstly, we'll have to see whether the uterus is good enough or not. See, sometimes if there are any developmental defects in the uterus that cannot be picked up in the scan, and if there are any extra growths in the uterus like polyps or small submucous fibroids, or if the uterine walls are stuck to each other, which we call it as synecdoche. So these uterine factors also lead to multiple IVF failures. Sometimes in the uterine wall, there will be multiple fibroids, huge fibroids. Even in such scenario, there won't be any implantation. So it is always better to go ahead, remove the fibroid and then proceed with embryo transfer. Sometimes in tubes, they will be water filled in the tubes. So we call it as hydrosalpinx. So what happens in hydrosalpinx is the water in the hydrosalpinx in the tube might flush away the embryo. Secondly, it is a toxic material. So that itself will cause a lot of toxicity around the embryo and it will not allow the embryo to get implanted. So whenever there are hydrosalpinx or bad tubal disease, it is always better to remove the tubes and then go ahead. So this is the physical factor that is going to affect the implantation. Now what are the other factors? We have to go ahead and check for the genetic testing. The genetic testing of both parents as well as embryo. See, suppose if there are any genetic abnormalities either in the structure of the chromosome or in the number of the chromosome, the resultant embryo will not have proper structure and number of the chromosome. That also will lead to repeat IVF failure. In such scenario, what we do is, we go ahead, do an embryo biopsy, do a PGS, that is pre-genetic screening, check for the chromosomal integrity, and only then we go ahead and transfer the embryo. Another scenario is we have to check for infections in the uterus like tuberculosis or bacterial infections, and basically check for chronic endometritis. And we have to check for autoimmune disorder too. See, sometimes what happens is you will have certain antibodies which will work against your own tissues. So when these are also positive, we will not have a successful implantation. So once we are able to reevaluate everything, and then we have to proceed with embryo transfer to have optimal success rate in repeat IVF failure.